Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
He was charming, educated, and trusted by the people around him. But behind closed doors, George Geschwendt was living a double life fueled by manipulation, control, and violence.
What began as whispers of abuse and deception would unravel into a chilling case that left an entire community questioning how someone so calculated could hide in plain sight for so long. This is the story of the Abt family massacre.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 37. Can you believe it? Of Stop Who Does That? I'm your host, Jackie.
And I'm your host, Jenna.
And we hope everyone is having a great week. Well, last night I did a little camp out in the backyard with the kids. So I'm a little tired today.
Did you make it the whole night out there?
I did. Yeah. And they were knocked out cold. They loved it. I don't think I slept very well. And then I have to work tonight until midnight.
Yeah.
So,
well, at least the kids had fun.
They did. So I highly recommend that to parents out there. If you want to spice things up this summer, just buy a tent and sleeping bags.
Great idea. It costs nothing. Yeah, you just go in your own backyard, make snacks, hang out, and the kids will get to do something out of the norm, like different.
Yeah, they loved it. And now I'm like, oh, you better not be asking to do this every night.
I was going to say, now you're going to have to do it every other weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my pool's open, so I spent the weekend at the pool, which is my favorite summer activity. My sons even came out for a little bit. So that was fun. We worked on our tan. The water was freezing, absolutely freezing cold, but it's to be expected. It's the beginning of the season, so we have the whole summer ahead of us for more.
I know. I was
pool.
going to say, you look like you got some color.
I did. While I was out all weekend, so I'm we're all trying to build our base for when we go to Florida later this month. So we're trying to work on our tans. That's what we did on this weekend, and we hope that you guys had a great weekend too. I think it's the unofficial start of summer now that we passed Memorial Day, so that's exciting. So we hope you guys had a great weekend too. And we're gearing up for another week. And as always, we want to thank you for your support. And if you have 1 minute of time to spare, if you could please go on Apple Podcasts and give us a review and a 5-star rating, we would really greatly appreciate it.
Yes, we would. And also, we're just full of surprises, aren't we, Jenna? Like, I feel like every month or two, something comes up and we're like, oh my gosh, we have something in the works for you guys.
We do. Another surprise.
Yes, there's an episode, and I'm not going to say which one, but we were contacted by another family member who heard from in a long, long time, often forgotten about in that case. And we've made contact with her, and we're going to be interviewing her this weekend. That episode we're planning to drop when we're on vacation, Jenna, mid-June. So stay tuned. You guys are going to love this follow-up.
Yeah, you guys are going to absolutely love it. And I really want to say who it is, but I don't think we should.
I know. I get the goosebumps because, it's just so cool that we get to talk to her and learn more about these people and who they were to her.
We get to share it with all of our listeners, which is going to be awesome.
Yeah, she really wants to be heard. And yeah, you guys are going to love it. That's all I was like. I don't want to give it away.
So
I can't wait.
Stay tuned, and you won't have to wait too long. It's coming in a few weeks, so you don't have to wait too long. But this episode that we have coming out today, I do want to give a special shout out to our very own Jackie for finding this case. Thank you, Jackie. I've never heard of this one before.
I didn't either. I forget. Honestly, I forget how I found it. I think it was on social media somewhere. It popped up and I was like, what? Bucks County? This happened in Bucks County, and I've never even heard of this. And the whole
Yeah.
story is just insane.
It,
So this is definitely one that makes you go, stop, who does that? Because this is crazy, and we can't wait to get into it.
yep. Let's get into it, Jackie.
All right. Well, before we get into the details of this case, it's important to understand just how dark and disturbing the story really is. George Geschwendt was a mass murderer and a family annihilator responsible for not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, but 6 deaths in the 1970s, including 5 members of a family of 7. Cases like this do force people to confront a terrifying reality that sometimes the people closest to you may be far more disturbed and dangerous than anyone could have ever imagined. Behind what may appear to be an ordinary life can exist deep rage, violence, and a capacity for unimaginable brutality. Let's get into the events leading up to the murders, what investigators uncovered, and how a crime this horrific left a lasting impact on the community for decades to come. This is the story of George Geschwendt and the Abt family massacre.
George Geschwendt was born on September 7th, 1951, making him 24 years old at the time of the crime. George grew up in the Trevose, Feasterville area of Bucks County, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia, as our listeners are very familiar with Bucks County, as we have done a number of big cases from that area. He lived on Dara Faith Road with his mother and brother, directly across the street from the Abt family, the same family that would later become central to one of the most horrifying mass murders in Bucks County history. During their preteen and teenage years, George was actually close friends with brothers Michael and Clifford Abt across the street. The 3 boys spent a lot of time playing pool, riding their bikes around town, and getting into the kind of trouble many kids their age did growing up in the 1960s and early 70s. I'm sure you can picture it in your head, just getting on your bike and taking off, telling your parents you'd be back around dinner time. And it seems like the 3 of them spent a lot of time in the 60s hanging out, just like kids do, neighborhood kids. You know, anyone who has kids, they kind of get that.
I always think of the Wonder Years.
Yeah, that's what I'm picturing.
Yeah.
That's the same time periods. Lots of neighborhood kids running around and playing. In a 1991 interview, Michael Abt even said, quote, "We were real pains in the ass. We were the best of friends." But whether that friendship was truly as close as Michael later described remains up for debate. According to reports, the relationship between George and the Abt brothers began to fall apart after George was sent to juvenile court for vandalism. Around that time, his home life was reportedly becoming increasingly unstable and very abusive. George later claimed his father was violent and unpredictable, allegedly chasing him and his siblings with a knife and even attempting to run him over with a car on multiple occasions. That's terrifying for a young child to live with. I mean, that's just, we're picturing this beautiful, picturesque neighborhood. Meanwhile, George is living in a house of horrors with his abusive father. I can't imagine how scared he must have been, and it probably deeply affected him. And Michael later said that his mother, Mrs. Abt, forbade the brothers from associating with George anymore because she feared he would become a bad influence. After that is when the families largely drifted apart, despite living directly across the street from one another. So I guess Clifford and Michael's mom was kind of seeing what was really going on here. George was getting into trouble. George's father was abusive, and she didn't want her sons to hang out with him anymore. And they could have been his only friends,
Yeah.
and it's just actually just makes me really sad because she's looking out for her own kids,
Yeah.
and nobody's really looking out for George.
I
And
feel like he was crying out for help
I
in a
know,
way.
I
Yeah.
know. And it just gives me a really sad feeling to know that backstory and then to know that their houses are right across the
Mhm.
street and they're seeing each other every day, but now they're not allowed to play together anymore. They're
Right.
not allowed to hang out after school. So again, I feel like this is having an impact on George. Now he's dealing with the abuse. Now he can't have his friends. It's
Mhm.
so much for a kid to have to go through.
Right.
So that's what Michael and Clifford say, but some other accounts paint a much darker picture of what happened after the friendship dissolved. Some reports claim that Michael and especially Clifford bullied George relentlessly in the years following this, kind of breakup of the friendship. They would shoot BB guns at him and his house. They would send unwanted flowers to his house. They would order a taxi to stop in front of the house, pranks kind of, trying to embarrass him. They embarrassed him because his mother had a foreign accent, German, most likely, and they would mock the accent in front of him in passing. Clifford, the oldest brother, was often described as the main instigator and the main bully in this situation. Whether George truly experienced years of bullying, rejection, and humiliation, or whether he exaggerated some of this in his own mind, one thing remained very clear is that he carried these feelings with him for many, many years.
Wow.
And by the 1970s, the mid 70s, investigators believed that the humiliation had turned into deep resentment and obsession. George became consumed with anger and a desire for revenge against the people he believed wronged him, the bullies, his former
Mhm.
friends and neighbors. At 24 years old, 24. So he's carrying
Yeah.
this. I mean, this happened when they were like 12-year-old kids.
Yeah.
So he's been carrying and harboring this resentment for many years, well over a decade.
He's keeping
Um,
track.
you know what it reminds me of, Jackie, is the Tepe murders. Monique and the dentist,
Yes.
that her ex-husband that she had been divorced for 10
Over 10
years.
years. Yeah.
He was the whole 10 years harboring so much resentment and hatred that he acted on it over 10
Yeah.
years later and killed them. This is kind of what it's reminding me of, like
Right.
just stewing with this hatred for over 10 years. So by the time he's 24, he purchased a 22 caliber firearm and ammunition, later falsely claiming the weapon had been stolen. What nobody around him realized was that the bitterness he had carried since childhood was about to erupt into a brutal act of violence that would leave 5 members of the Abt family dead and permanently scar the Bucks County community forever.
Wonder too if by the time he was 24, were they still even bullying him? I feel like they
Oh, So
probably weren't.
I read an interview with Michael, and he
Yeah.
said we literally hadn't even talked to him for the past 8 years. Like
Right.
we were adults, like we all moved on. Yes,
Right.
they bullied him when they were 12, 13, but Michael said we hadn't even spoken to George in
Right.
at least 8 years but prior to this act. So,
Wow. He was probably keeping a diary of everything they ever said to him, either in his head or physically,
I know.
and just stewing and stewing and stewing. But also, he probably wasn't happy at home either. There was more going on there. I think in our minds, especially when you're being traumatized by someone in your family, I feel like you tend to take it out on other people that are unrelated to it.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
you
you're
can't face up to the so, like, if his dad, for example, like, he probably felt powerless against his dad, but
Mhm.
these other people that he's not even related to can get the brunt of his anger.
Yeah, it's like a way to control things that you have no control over, but
Right,
now
exactly.
you can. Yeah. I think that's what was going on.
Yeah. Well, whatever was going on, George had been brewing a plan for many years. On March 12th, 1976, George put his plan finally into motion. When the Abt family was away from their home in Trevose, Pennsylvania, he broke inside by smashing a kitchen window and climbing through. But this was not a random burglary or crime committed in a panic. Investigators would later realize that this was a carefully planned ambush carried out with chilling patience. After entering the home, George cleaned up the broken glass and positioned himself behind a piano, a spot that gave him a clear view of both the kitchen and the living room entrances. From there, he waited. So let's just back up a second. March 12th, 1976, he decides today's the day. I'm taking this whole family out. They bullied me for many years, although not as of late. He's unhappy at home. He was allegedly abused as a child, and who knows, maybe that abuse carried on into adulthood, right?
Right.
He's ready to take out this family that lives across the street that just seems so happy, and he's probably envious of them. He's angry with them. So how do you take out a whole family? You go in and you hide behind a piano and you wait for them to walk in
One by
by
one.
one. So he sat there and waited for hours, waiting for each member of the family to come in. Police, obviously, in retrospect, considered how this plan was executed, and they realized he had so many opportunities to leave that house and abandon this horrific plan that he had in mind, which goes to show intent, right? But instead, he sat there calmly for hours with his .22 caliber handgun, wearing ear protectors. Oh, God forbid the sound of the gun hurts my ears. Waiting for each victim to walk through the door one by one. Investigators described the murders as incredibly cold and methodical. This wasn't even a burglary gone wrong. It was an execution. And I would agree. I mean, this is a planned execution one by one. You're getting my wrath. And also cleaning up the glass. He obviously didn't want anyone coming home to see that and be like, oh, what's going on? So, like, this is so...
It's very premeditated.
That's where I'm going. It's extremely premeditated. There's so many opportunities he could have turned around and went home. The first victims were the youngest members of the family, unfortunately. Around 3 p.m., so probably when school lets out, siblings Kathy and John, Kathy was 13, John was 14, they came home from school. They entered the home. George shot them in the head and carried their bodies down into the basement. So again, showing another level of intent that you're hiding bodies you just shot, so the ones coming home later don't see that and run. Sometime earlier, this is trigger warning, guys, this involves a dog. Sometime earlier, after entering the home, he also shot and killed the family's St. Bernard, Heidi, later attempting to conceal the dog's body beneath clothing and other items. So he got the dog out of the way, so there was nothing to alert other people. This is sick. This is really sick.
It's chilling. It's absolutely chilling.
So then 2 hours later, I would assume around 5 p.m., the matriarch of the family, Margaret Abt, she's only 46 years old at this time, she returns home from work at the IRS. As soon as she walked in the door, he took her out. Immediately shot and killed. Then minutes later, 19-year-old Margie came home from her job and walked directly into the same nightmare. She was shot in the head just inside the house. By this point, George is realizing more family members are going to come home soon. Like, this isn't over yet. And he no longer had as much time as he did before to carry bodies into the basement. So instead, he dragged Margaret and Margie to the top of the basement stairs near the kitchen and just threw them down before wiping away blood trails and resuming his way. So he's literally like not carrying them down. He's just tumbling them down.
He was a slim, small man.
Yeah.
So he must have been running on adrenaline. So that's 4 family members now in 2 hours. He just killed 4 family members. and
So
the
he
dog.
had to move quick because that was around 5, and then by 5:30, between 5:30 5:45, we got the family patriarch, John, age 49, arriving home from his job with the telephone company. Unfortunately, he was killed immediately after entering the home. I mean, these people are walking into a trap and they don't even know it. Like, they're
Walking
not even noticing anything from the outside because he's cleaned all that up. He's cleaned up the bodies. He's cleaned up the blood. I mean, he really thought this through.
They're like walking into their own home that you feel the place you feel safest at. It's
You'd
terrifying.
never expect it. Never in a million years expect I'm going to open my front door and some shot is going to come from somewhere in my house
Mhm.
and shoot me. And
Mhm.
he's hiding behind the piano, so they obviously can't see this. Unbelievable. So now that the father's killed, we have a 6th victim who's not a family member. It is 20-year-old Garson, aka Gary Engle, which is Margie's boyfriend. So he's probably coming over to hang out with Margie
Mhm.
or get
I
dinner or
can't.
something.
He wasn't even a target. Talk about the wrong place at the wrong time.
My gosh. So he arrives at 6 o'clock to celebrate the anniversary of their first date. So
Yeah.
a year, they've been together a year. He's probably coming over to take her out.
He probably had flowers.
Oh my gosh. So he's completely unaware that he's walking into a house that has 5 dead bodies in the basement and a dog. And like the others, he was shot in the head just moments after walking through the door. When 21-year-old Michael, so we still have Michael and we have Clifford. Those are the only remaining members of the Abt family that are still alive. So we have Michael, he's arriving home. He immediately realizes something's wrong because it's late at night. Normally the house is busy, the lights are on. You probably see kids in the backyard playing. I mean, this is a large family. But as he approaches the house, he realized that lights aren't on. It feels silent and empty. And as he walked inside, he spotted bloodstains and bloody rags before running back out of the house in terror. Thank God he saw what he saw and ran.
Yeah, and I'm glad he ran out so he wouldn't have to see the horrors that were in there.
Oh my gosh. He could have walked in between George cleaning up.
I know, again,
Yeah.
talk about the timing. If he had
Because
come
normally,
home
yeah, he was taking people out as soon as they walked through the door, but like he had a minute to really look around, it seems.
because George was gone.
Yeah. So as he walked inside, I'm sorry. So obviously, Michael calls the police. The police soon discover bodies of the 6 victims in the basement when they arrive. Again, 5 members were of Michael's family and the 6th was his sister's boyfriend. So now we only have 2 remaining members of the Abt family, and that's Michael and his older brother, Clifford, who was in jail at the time on a forgery charge. Talk about the one time you're probably grateful you were in jail.
The timing is unreal with this. The timing, if Michael had just come home even 2 or 3
Earlier?
hours earlier, he
Yeah.
would have. And Michael and Clifford were the targets of this whole operation.
Mhm.
George really was triggered by Michael and Clifford, and they were the real targets. Everyone else was just collateral damage, and they were the only ones that were not killed.
Yeah, I wonder, I mean, we're thinking like, why take out the whole family? I wonder if there was some jealousy
I think you're
about
right.
they're
Yeah.
such a great family. They rejected me. They thought I was damaged goods. I was a
Well,
bad influence on their kids, and
and
I'm just
remember,
normal.
um,
Yeah,
Mrs. Opp said, "I don't want you hanging out with him anymore."
yeah,
So he probably harbored resentment against her too.
absolutely.
And, then like you said, then the whole family comes along with it because they're all the same. He probably told himself. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, so Michael reported it, and the police came immediately. And so what happened was around 6:30 that evening, after nearly 3.5 hours inside the Abt home, George finally decided to leave. But According to his later confession, like we stated earlier, the two people he most wanted to kill, Michael and Clifford Abt, had never come home. He reportedly admitted that he would have stayed there until midnight, waiting for them. But something happened that made him very anxious and very nervous. The telephone. The telephone kept ringing over and over and over inside the house. And this was the 1970s where you still had a phone, on the wall or in the kitchen. And if they didn't probably have an answering machine. So whoever was calling, would kept calling back, 10 minutes later, 10 minutes later. Well, this started to make George very uncomfortable and nervous. He probably thought maybe it was the neighbors, maybe it was the police. So he abandoned ship. He couldn't even follow through with the whole plan. He just left without ever killing Michael or Clifford. And like you said, Jackie, Clifford was in jail. So did he not know that? Like he seemingly didn't know, because he was waiting for both of them, and he said he would have waited hours longer. So he had no idea Clifford was in jail.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think you do your research. I mean, I guess maybe Clifford's arrest didn't make the newspapers.
Yeah, and maybe there was no word of mouth. I don't know, but he was under the impression that they would both be coming home. But the telephone deterred him, and he ran away like a scared little bitch. He just ran right out the back door, ran away. So, he thought it was maybe the neighbors heard the gunshots, maybe they were checking on the family. Then he started thinking, well, somebody might arrive unexpectedly. Now he just kind of lost it, and he abandoned the plan and fled
It's
the
like
scene.
cleanup mode now.
Yeah, fled the scene. Before leaving, he attempted to cover his tracks as carefully as he had carried out the murders. He concealed the murder weapon, his bloody clothing, and the rubber gloves he had worn during the killings inside the saddlebags of his motorcycle. Investigators later learned that he deliberately took a winding, indirect route home in an effort to avoid attracting attention or being seen. Well, yeah, what do you mean? He could have walked across the street, unless he wasn't living at his mother's house anymore. So he took this long way home and went back into his home in, the dark of night. Over the next several days, George systematically disposed of evidence connected to the massacre. He threw his shoes and gloves into the Delaware River, which we always say, Jackie, Lord knows what is in the Delaware River. I mean, the amount of things tossed over there. So he threw the gloves and shoes. He washed his bloodstained clothes before donating them to Goodwill. Oh, how thoughtful of him.
Yeah, but also, that makes me think twice about secondhand clothes now.
Yeah, I mean, he cleaned them out. At least he washed them.
Jeez.
Days later, he discarded the .22 caliber handgun, shell casings, and remaining ammunition into Neshaminy Creek. For a short time, it appeared he may have gotten away with one of the worst mass murders Bucks County had ever seen. But the investigation quickly began closing in on him. About a week after the murders, police brought George in for questioning regarding the alleged theft of the firearm he previously claimed was stolen. So remember, he bought this firearm, and then he declared it stolen as a premeditated way to kind of cover, the weapon if it was ever found. He would have said, oh, I already reported it stolen.
Yeah.
So during questioning, he agreed to take a polygraph exam, and investigators said, can you guess what it said, Jackie? Said he
Liar.
failed. It's around the same time, big shocker. It showed deception. Around the same time, children fishing in a nearby creek discovered the murder weapon. That's nice. Now we're involving innocent children discovering a handgun in the creek.
Well, also, what are the odds, right? That it would be found.
Why didn't he throw it in the Delaware River with the rest of the stuff? Why would he throw it in a tiny creek? Well, why did he
that
do
was
any
really
of it?
dumb. Well,
Yeah,
he did. Yeah, I mean, he just. Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't sound like it's that deep. But
no, because if the children were fishing and playing,
Clearly,
It was probably
that
like
deep.
2 feet deep.
Yeah. Well,
Whatever.
think about it. He already reported it missing. So
Yeah.
he's trying to make it look like,
Yeah.
see, they stole my gun and they used it
Yeah.
on my neighbors.
Yeah,
Oh,
I told you it
okay.
was missing, you know.
Yeah.
On March 22nd, 1976, just 10 days after the murders, George confessed. During hours of questioning, he described the killings in horrifying detail. He referred to the massacre as a, quote, personal vendetta, and even expressed regret that he had failed to kill Michael and Clifford. At one point, he chillingly stated, I would have stayed until midnight to get the other two. He later described the murders as his, quote, only achievement in life. And that's really, really sad.
You know who he reminds me of?
Are you,
Another German from Pennsylvania.
are you going to say Brian Koberger?
Exactly. I think Brian Koberger would believe that what he did in Idaho was like his only big achievement in life. You know? Like,
Couldn't agree more. And the
and then like
similarities,
violating their personal safety, coming into their home.
yes. And how you mentioned before that George may have been jealous of the
Yeah.
family. Like Brian was jealous of this friend group that
Mm-hmm.
he could have never been a part of because he,
Right.
you know,
He's not one of them.
wasn't
Right.
one of them. So yeah, you're right, Jackie. We do hate
Mm.
bringing up Koberger's name, but we do it all the time. It
Yeah.
it's very similar, very
Yeah.
similar. Yeah, entering the home, massacring everybody in there. Yeah, you're right. You're
Who
right.
knows? He could have studied this crime. Being from
Uh,
Pennsylvania, who knows, right?
Well, he did go to school for criminal justice,
Right.
and
That's what I'm saying.
yeah,
Like, he
you're
could have
right.
studied this one. He's probably heard of it.
Oh yeah, Jackie, I
A little
think you're
weird. Okay.
100% right. So yeah, that's very disturbing, to say the least. His
Yeah.
only achievement in life. The revelation that the killer was their former childhood friend and neighbor shocked surviving Abt brothers, Michael and Clifford, and the entire community. George had lived just 90 feet away from the family home. Michael later described George as quiet, withdrawn, and isolated. He always stayed at home. He said he's a very strange dude. Very quiet, very withdrawn. He never left the house. He never dated girls. But what no one fully realized at the time was just how deeply George had held on to the years of resentment and perceived humiliation until it erupted into one of Pennsylvania's most
Mm-hmm.
horrifying family massacres.
Yeah. Well, let's show you a photo of the family before we finish up here and what George looks like to give you a visual. And I apologize for our listeners who are probably listening in the car, but if you watch our YouTube, you can see visuals. So this is John, the dad, and Margie, his daughter. And then we have Michael, the survivor,
Mm-hmm.
one who came home last. And then this is George.
That's his high school graduation
Yeah.
photo. And he has those dark rimmed glasses.
Yeah.
He has like a very prominent jawline and
Thin
looks to
lips.
be, yeah, thin lips, blonde hair that he has neatly combed to the side. I mean, he looks like your quintessential, that looks like your typical average like late 1960s high school yearbook photo. It
Yeah.
really does. I mean, he
I mean, he
doesn't,
looks nerdy.
yeah,
Yeah.
Jackie, he looks nerdy, but like from that photo of a high school,
Yeah.
he doesn't look deranged.
No. And then here's him in the 1990s,
Well,
George.
there he's looking a little more serial killer-ish.
But is it the glasses that makes him look that
And the
way?
mustache. So this photo, he's older. Oh, he must be like in his 40s in this
Yeah.
photo, and he is wearing those Jeffrey Dahmer
Yeah.
looking glasses. He has a mustache. He still has his hair combed over to the side.
Yeah.
And he's looking very profoundly out a window,
Yeah.
probably of jail.
Yeah. He's something else, man. Something
Yeah,
else.
and so that's the man who took out this whole family, and poor Gary,
Yeah.
the boyfriend, which I'm sure his family was absolutely
Oh my
devastated.
gosh.
His
I
whole
mean,
life was taken from him, just like the West Coast Video murders, that
yeah.
young men, and that he was 21 years old. His whole life was taken because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Think about like how excited him and Margie probably were for
I
that
know.
night. Oh my gosh.
But
They were looking forward to it.
she probably thought they were gonna get married one day. I mean,
Yeah.
this was like they've been together for a year. She was probably, back in that time, 19, 20 years old. Everybody was getting married. So
Yeah.
she
It was
probably
heading that
thought like,
direction.
yeah, yeah, it was heading that
Yeah.
direction, and she was probably so excited. Her family was probably very excited and proud
No.
of her, and um it's just so like hard to wrap your brain around that one person could wipe out basically, 80% of an entire family in 3
Yeah.
hours.
And think about like she was probably rushing to get inside to get
Yeah.
changed
Yeah.
and get
Yeah.
ready. Unreal. Well, let's talk about how this played out in the court system. So when George went to trial, he pled not guilty by reason of insanity. And yes, George, I agree. This is kind of crazy, but honey, sweetie, you are not insane. His defense argued that years of emotional trauma, abuse, and psychological instability had pushed him beyond the point of rational thinking. But prosecutors painted a very different picture. One of a patient, calculated killer who carefully planned every step of the massacre. The jury ultimately agreed with the prosecution, and I can agree with that. This is not a Richard Greased situation
No.
where you think demons are possessing the family and you've got to take them out.
You're
Like,
hearing voices and
yeah,
you just snap just like that. This was nothing like you said, it's an insane
no.
act upon itself, but you are not an insane person.
Also, with that kind of confession that he gave, did you really think you were going to get not guilty by reason of insanity? I mean, you said this was like the greatest achievement of your life. I don't, I'm not hearing any
Yeah,
magic in there.
good point.
So he tried and epically failed at that. In July 1976, George was convicted on 6 counts of murder and sentenced to death in the electric chair. However, just 1 year later, Pennsylvania's death penalty laws were ruled unconstitutional, and his sentence was automatically commuted to 6 consecutive life sentences. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I think if you methodically take out that many people and you wait for them like their prey, you
Yeah.
probably shouldn't waste any more breath on this planet,
Yeah,
in
I
my opinion.
agree. I would have to agree.
I mean, I don't know how you rehabilitate that, right?
Yeah.
Over the following years, George continued to file appeals, insisting the jury had not been properly instructed regarding the insanity defense. Oh no, honey, they were. By 1983, it appeared he had exhausted all legal options. But in 1991, a federal judge unexpectedly ruled that the original trial judge may have made an error by not fully explaining to jurors that they could find George not guilty by reason of insanity. The judge wrote that if the jurors had been given clearer instructions, there was at least a reasonable possibility they could have reached a different verdict. Later that same year, a 3-judge panel from the Third Circuit Court of Appeals agreed, ruling that George should either receive a new trial or be released from prison. The decision stunned prosecutors and devastated surviving members of the Abt family. This is already reminding me of the Susan Reinert case when Jay
Yes.
Smith got out.
Yeah, how many times now have we seen this? This is absolutely like I I can't even tell you, like,
Yeah.
it's common. It's like it's actually common.
But was it more common back in this day, like in the 80s, 70s?
Feel
I
like
mean, we've learned from those mistakes
yeah,
now that it won't
yeah.
happen as much.
I feel like people still do appeal, but it just gets nowhere and it just wastes
Yeah.
taxpayer dollars. But back then it seemed to be the thing to do to actually get you out of jail.
Yeah, and we are seeing it now with the Murdaugh case.
Mhm.
He
Yes.
is getting a new trial. But I would agree that was kind of egregious what Becky Hill did. I
I
mean,
agree. And now we talked about this before, Jackie. It's been so many years. Where in the hell are they going to get a fair pool of
I
jurors
know,
that have
right?
never heard of this? I guess maybe if you go to like Alaska or maybe like the
Mhm.
Pacific Northwest, but I feel like everybody's heard of this case. So how is he going to get a fair trial now at this point?
I don't know. There's always people out there that we talk to in our normal day to day that don't know anything about the cases we talk about. And you're like,
True.
how do you not? I mean, think of there were people at Crime Time that had never heard of Ellen Greenberg.
True. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't know. You probably could find people.
They'll find them, but you know, that is happening. That's a good example, and that
Yeah.
of how one thing can grant you a whole new trial.
Yeah. But luckily for the family, the Third Circuit Court ultimately reversed the decision of giving him a new trial, ruling that the original jury instructions were sufficient after all. So, as a result, George remained in prison for the rest of his life. But while George spent decades behind bars, the surviving members of the Abt family were also left permanently destroyed by what happened that night, and I don't know how you can't be permanently destroyed by that. Clifford, the one who was in prison at the time of the murders, he struggled for years with legal troubles and addiction, spending time in and out of jail before eventually dying in 1989 from complications related to narcotics. And then we have Michael, who was the last to arrive that evening. He spiraled in the years following the murders. By the early 1990s, he had lost his driver's license, his job, and his home, and admitted that for years he survived by selling methamphetamines. During one interview, he was living in a motel with his pregnant girlfriend, still clearly haunted by the trauma of losing almost his entire family in one night. In many ways, even though Michael and Clifford survived physically, George's actions destroyed their lives too. The ripple effects of the massacre continued long after the murders themselves. And as far as George spent ultimately 43 years in prison before dying of natural causes on May 22nd, 2020, at the State Correctional Institution at Waymart in Wayne County, Pennsylvania. At that time, he was 68 years old. So George got what was coming to him.
Just a very sad, sad ending. Like the two survivors were
Yeah.
tormented by this for their entire lives, which how could they not? And I'm sure they never it was a different time back then in the 80s and 90s. I'm sure they didn't get the mental health help that they needed. And
Mm-hmm.
they were just kind of like expected to live a normal everyday life after their entire family was murdered. I
Yeah.
just it's so sad.
Well, and also too, like, I wonder what was really going on in George's life in those 8 years when he stopped talking to the family, right? Like, what was going on in his family that led him to
Yeah.
become this monster that he did? Because obviously there was a lot of resentment. There was, he wanted to get back at them for which I guess some people can hold those grudges the rest of their lives.
Yeah,
It's bullying
especially if,
and,
like, your life's just not working out for you, like, he wasn't
Mhm.
dating, he wasn't married, maybe he felt like they were the cause. You know how people like to blame, especially, like,
They can
narcissists,
never
like
look in the mirror.
yeah, they
Yeah.
wanna blame everyone but themselves, and maybe he told himself that Michael and Clifford's bullying, and his father's abuse were the reasons why his life never worked out, and,
Right.
I'm gonna get back at them because they ruined my life.
Yes, exactly. It's all their fault,
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
very mentally ill
Mhm.
approach to thinking, but it happens to a lot of people. And yeah, I feel in this case that George, Michael, and Clifford all would have been good candidates for a psychologist, some
Hmm.
mental health help, maybe some medication.
Right.
I feel like they all had demons and they were all struggling with different things, but none of them got the proper help.
No. And it just goes to show you should always be kind to others,
Uh-huh.
because you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors, and you don't know if they're at their breaking point that day. And I do try to live my life like that, be kind no matter what.
Yeah.
I try not to ever take out a bad day I'm having out on other people. I'm also medicated, so that helps too. Like it helps even your mood out, and you just, I don't know, you can become a little more resilient being on antidepressants, I think.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
just yeah, like we said, just be kind.
Yeah.
We're all in this life together. We're all trying to get through every day the best we can, and everybody's dealing with different things, and not one thing is worse or better than somebody else. We're all dealing with things. I think our message for this episode would be just be kind to everyone, and you know, we're all having days we're just trying to get through. Just,
Hmm.
hold the door, give a smile, give a compliment. You might make somebody's day just by doing those simple things.
Absolutely. And I feel like there's not enough positivity in this world.
Yeah.
I'm sure we all can agree, like, even at your workplace, right? It's like you're always told what you're not doing right, but never what you are doing
Yeah.
correctly. And, I always try to do that for other people and let them know, like, oh, hey, your skin looks great today. Or, oh, did you get your hair cut? You have such a brilliant mind. Like, I say these things and I don't say them lightly. It's just like people
Yeah.
aren't told these things.
No, and
Yeah.
yeah, if you listen to this today and after this episode you could give a compliment to somebody
Yes.
when you're out and about or at your workplace or even like at home or your kid's school, just give one compliment. It will make you feel better and you might make somebody's entire day, especially if they are having a bad day. I just would like everyone to try to do that after listening to this episode.
You get what you give in the world.
Mhm.
And we'll leave you with that.
Yeah. Well, we thank
All
you
right,
for
guys.
listening.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.